You had a disagreement with Tim Richmond over a car he was supposed to have won for earning the pole position. What was that all about? I don't know what happened later when you guys sort of made up. You put out this picture of both of what, ketchup?
Ketchup, yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't get any real blood.
How that happened?
Oh, well, Tim and I were, I was kind of a father figure to him, and we were always trying to straighten him out. And I heard, sitting in my office, I heard that Tim badmouthed that he won the pole, and as part of the pole, he got a new Thunderbird. Well, it was, it had 5,000 miles on it. That's new. He didn't like that. So he made a very derogatory remark about it. And I said, well, I always like to confront things at the moment. And so I took off, went over to the garage area, and Tim's over there. And he's hot-headed, as I am. And he said, he started giving me some lip, and I grabbed him and slammed him against the trailer. And all of a sudden, his pit crew's over there, grabbing me so I won't hurt poor Tim. And so we made up over it. It was kind of a silly thing, but it worked out. Just another chapter in my life.
Over the years, you seem to enjoy when other drivers got into controversies. You had the Jaws thing, and you had the stuffed shark in the garage, and you kind of made hay when there was a little bit of controversy that you could help use to sell tickets. How did that come about? Is that just Promoter 101?
It's the first page. If you can get the athletes embroiled against each other, you're going to sell X number of tickets that you wouldn't normally sell. I saw that back when I was kind of a kid, and Junior Johnson and Lee Petty were racing at the Charlotte Fairgrounds, and they knocked each other's fenders off. And Junior and it really got into it the last lap, and Lee Petty put him into the fence, and he won the race. Well, Bill France happened to be the senior, happened to be the promoter of that race, and all of a sudden it was announced that they were going to have another race at the Charlotte Fairgrounds the next week. And that was something else. And of course they came back, and by that time, like racers do, they had made up, and they never touched each other the whole race, but the grandstand was packed. So I always thought, well, nothing beats having a really strong controversy when you have two drivers going at each other. Nothing sells tickets more than two drivers after each other.
Well, over the years, Charlotte really expanded. Seating, suites, we know about all that. But perhaps the most significant thing were the lights. And that first All-Star race under the lights. What was your thoughts about doing all that?
Well, every year to get the Winston back, I had to go up to RJR and make a presentation to get it back about how we were going to promote it, what we were going to do, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I went up there with a bunch of bland ideas, and Wayne Robertson was running RJR's events department then. And when we got through, he looked at me like, so what? I said, maybe we need to move it to Richmond. Well, that's the last thing I wanted to see happen. And because Paul Sawyer at Richmond was really after that event. And Paul and I were good friends, but, you know, it's business. So I'm sitting there thinking, what can I do? What can I do? And my great marketing guy, Jim Duncan, was in there with us. And I said, well, how about us run it at night? There was a complete blank stare. No super speedway had ever been run at night. And Wayne looked at me like I had just fallen off the truck. And he ran over me. And he said, well, how can you light? Yeah. How can you light a super speedway? I don't know, but we'll do it. He said, if you can pull that one off, you got it back. I said, I will guarantee you it will work. Well, we got out in the car, and Jim Duncan looked at me and he said, you're crazy. Well, I said, I know that, but he said, how are you going to do that? I don't know, but we'll figure a way out. If you can light a half-mile track, why can't you light a mile-and-a-half track? Well, there's a lot of reasons why you can't. So I tried to invent the lighting system myself. So I put some lights up in the fourth turn, and I got the pace car out there. And I'm driving the pace car. Now that pace car that we had would run, run about 140. Not quite as fast as a race car, but it would get through there. Well, I went down through those lights the third lap, and I looked to the left, and I was totally blinded by the lights. And I just about bought the farm then, because the car did everything but hit the wall. And so my operations guy comes over and he says, I don't think your deal is going to work. I said, it isn't. So that's when I called Musco up in little hayseed company up in Muscadine, Iowa, that turned out to be now one of the great outdoor lighting companies in the world. And I think they really got their start at Charlotte, because they came up with the idea of the reflectors on the inside, so when the driver looked to the left, he wasn't blinded. And also there weren't tall poles that would interfere with sight lines in the grandstand. So it worked out great.
Bruton started buying tracks in the 1990s, and he really started this seismic shift in the sport across the country. And there was a ton of reaction about all that, and it wasn't all good. What was your opinion about all that?
Well, we were trying to do everything we could to make NASCAR a mainstream national sport. Because we got tired of seeing the NFL and Major League Baseball, etc., upstage us constantly when we had an event. And so we worked on that real hard, trying to figure out a way to get things going. Now, our problem is unlike basketball, football, and baseball, we weren't a big city sport. NFL was, NBA certainly was, and Major League Baseball certainly was. We weren't. So we didn't command the attention of major media like the Brooklyn Dodgers would have, or Notre Dame football. And so we thought if we could get the sport in other places, that it would unify things and we'd start getting some better coverage. Now what happened was it kind of got wild and crazy because we did start going other places. New Hampshire's a great example. Bob Baer did a great job of putting things together at the track that we later bought. Who knew at the time that New Hampshire would sell out within days of putting their tickets on sale. They did. Those people were just as hungry for racing as we were down in the South. And yet, to get New Hampshire with cup racing, Wilkesboro had to close. And that really got a lot of people's rankles up. Should we have closed Wilkesboro? It was part of the heartbeat of the sport. It was a tough decision. Rockingham had its own built-in fan base, and should it have been closed? All those tracks were closed because of the expansion. And, going to Texas and Las Vegas and Sears Point, California, and places like that was certainly nationalized the sport. Something that needed to be done badly. Well, what happened when we nationalized the sport? For one thing, we start losing our core drivers. Earnhardt's killed. That had an immense impact on the sport because, not everybody loved Dale Earnhardt. Half of them loved him and half of them hated him. That's just the way it was. But they paid attention to him. That was the big thing. He was a villain to some and a hero to others. And you can't beat that combination in a star. So usually when a great driver retires or is killed or whatever, somebody will come along to replace him. Unfortunately, after Earnhardt died, nobody came along to replace him. Yes, Dale Jr. came along, but he was a completely different person than Dale Sr. Dale Sr. was this Clint Eastwood type race driver. Dale Jr. was the boy next door, and that got him a lot of fans. But he was not senior. And, it's like Junior Johnson retired. Who took his place? Dale Earnhardt Jr. took his place to a great extent. Nobody took Dale Sr.'s place. Nobody. I thought for a while maybe Clint Boyer might. Because Clint had a similar background. He worked in a body shop in Kansas City and came back and tried to I told him when he first got in, I said, don't change. Don't buy a Prevost, stay in a hotel where you can see the fans. And all that kind of stuff. Well, that didn't work out. We just never had the same type of guy come along. Now, I've seen him. I saw a guy down at the Devil's Bowl in Mesquite, Texas, who would have been a perfect Earnhardt. He's run a sprint car race. He was last, passed every car in the field, won the race, crashed the guy on the last lap, just like Earnhardt did at Metrolina. And I went down and talked to the guy, and he was perfect. He had a buzz haircut. His teeth were crooked. He hadn't shaved in a couple days. He had a T-shirt you could take in New York, sold for a bunch of money because it had so many holes in it, but he made them welding. And he just, a pair of blue jeans that was probably 15 years old. And Brogans. He was Earnhardt. He'd have never gotten a sponsor today. Nobody would have taken a chance on him. He didn't talk right, and he didn't dress right. He didn't have the perfect teeth and the nice haircut, etc. He wouldn't have gotten in here. And yet, that's the kind of guy we need racing.
Is racing ever gonna get one?
Pardon?
Is racing ever gonna get one?
There may be a guy out there that is so good and somebody that really understands racers will take a chance on him. That's the only way it's going to work. Because chances are he is not going to be a person that is going to attract sponsors. Somebody's got to force the sponsors on him. It's like Earnhardt Sr. Wrangler sponsored him because their big competition was Levi Strauss. And Wrangler jeans needed to have a tough reputation because you're not selling blue jeans to guys playing in the symphony. You know, these are truck drivers, body men, just common, ordinary, everyday men. And they needed a tough guy to represent them. And Earnhardt was perfect for them. That's the kind of thing that would bring a kid along that would bring us back. The problem is today, most of your good racers start racing when they're 8 years old, and part of that's my fault because I invented something called a bandolero, which is perfect for a 9 or 10-year-old, and then the legends they can move up to. All your top drivers today came up through that system, and so that means they start racing when they're 8 or 9, and they go to school, yeah, but they don't have time to do anything else except maybe be in the shop. And the shop is just like to a racer, just like a gym is to a boxer. You aren't going to learn much from the social aspect in those places. So you kind of grow up one-sided. Versus the old drivers who couldn't race till they were 21. And so they had to be out and about doing other things rather than just be. See, what people don't realize is that when you become a racer, you live in the shop. What can you learn in the shop other than fabricating and welding and all that kind of stuff? Nothing. Not socially, because that's not exactly the social capital of the world.
There seemed to be an us against them attitude between Speedway Motorsports and NASCAR, which is ISC. Were you aware of that, or did you just avoid it and go about trying to promote Charlotte?
Well, both. I was certainly aware of it because I had to deal with NASCAR and the Francis, and they also owned the majority of ISC. And so we had to, balance that out and work it out, and it got tough sometimes. And I remember, you have a meeting with Bill France Jr., a lot of times he would overwhelm the meeting with people. I went down to meet with him over TV. I was hell-bent for each track to negotiate the TV themselves. He wanted to put it together as a group and sell it to the network representing all the tracks. Well, I understand why he wanted to do that. But I didn't think we'd come out as well as if we'd sold them individually. So I went down there, and I came in the office, sat down, and all of a sudden, here comes 8 people. And I looked over at Billy and I said, "Is this a massacre? Why is there so many people here when it's just you and me?" "Well, I want them to hear what, yak. But it got real interesting dealing with NASCAR.
Humpy, how would you like for race fans to remember you?
I think as a person that cared about them and try to make things better for them. And I always put the race fan first and the TV second. I never did get along well with the networks. They're tough to deal with, obstinate, etc. And all New York mentality. But the fans I loved, and I wanted to see them enjoy themselves. That's why before every race, I would go down the grandstand, down there around the start-finish line. And I'd always pick, particularly if they had kids with them, pick some few fans and bring them down in and let them see the pre-race from right there in front of the stage. And they like that because, it's just something that doesn't get done. So I think to remember what I did, what we did, just to make it a little better. That's all. Simple.
One last quick question. Somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you're Humpy Wheeler. You're that guy that was in Cars, the movie. How do you react to that?
Well, they don't care about 35 years I was at the Speedway. The only thing they care about is the cars, particularly kids. I built the 53 Hudson that was voiced by my good old friend Paul Newman. And matter of fact, it's got in memory of Paul Newman on the back. I can't drive that anywhere because soccer moms will see it, and the kids have all gone crazy in the van, and they want me to pull over so the kids could experience the car a little closer. So that's been quite a thing because there's kids they're a little different than we were coming up. Of course, we didn't have movies on TV, but they'll watch stuff. They'll watch a movie like Cars 30 or 40 times. They just don't get tired of it. And so I know we ran in the great race with the Doc Hudson, and that's 100 of fabulous old cars with great pedigree and everything else. And wherever we went, we always stopped for lunch, and we had a show. And then we stopped at the end of the day and had a show. And they would gravitate toward the Hudson before they saw anything else, because particularly if they had kids around them. I remember being up in Poughkeepsie for one of the stops. It was a night stop, and usually we had an hour and a half car show in some parking lot, empty parking lot that we took over. And here comes this guy with a kid in a wheelchair. And he'd come down to Poughkeepsie from Quebec, up on the Gaspé Peninsula. And he said he brought his child there because he heard that the Hudson was going to be there. And that was the kid's favorite thing. So he brought the kid all the way down there. And of course, I put the kid in the car and all that. And after the thing disbanded, we even took him for a ride, which the boy had cerebral palsy, and not many things on him worked. When I got back, the fathers looked at the kid and started crying because he saw that something had been done that had uplifted this poor kid. And then I started crying. It was a blubber bath in Poughkeepsie.